Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited because I haven't had a podcast guest in a while. And so it's even more so my pleasure to introduce to you Sahar Yousef from UC Berkeley. Hi, Sahar. How are you today?
Hi, good to see you. I'm doing well. Excited to be here with you.
Great. Yes, me too. I'm super excited to have you. We have a couple of really great questions that we want to talk about today, but let's start with the really simple question. Who are you? Or maybe that's not such a simple question, but we'll see.
I was gonna say coming out of the gate with the deep questions,
right?
Because who am I really? Well, it's not as deep as that. Well, I'm a neuroscientist by training, and I received my PhD from UC Berkeley, and I study specifically neuroplasticity, so how the brain changes and adapts. And my specialty is in cognitive training, so how we can take non-invasive, non-pharmacological techniques and strategies and actually train people, specifically high performers, to actually improve their performance, either things like memory, their ability to focus, their information processing speed, etc. And how can we improve these basic cognitive functions in a short amount of time, in a matter of weeks, really. And that's what I studied. And I wear two hats now. I'm a faculty member at the UC Berkeley Haas School of Business, a bit of a black sheep within the School of Business, and as a biologist. But I apply what we know about how the brain works and how the body works to productivity and performance in the workplace. So we optimize and create work methodologies and systems of working, not only for individuals, but also teams, in order to truly get the most work done in the least amount of time with the least amount of physiological stress. So really bridging the gap between biology and how we actually go about doing our work. And the second hat I wear is taking that out into the world. I call it boots on the ground. I try not to be a very philosophical, professor. I make sure that everything that we develop in the lab is actually tested, with teams across internationally, across the world, and it actually works. So we collect data and do research, and I do a lot of trainings.
Great. Wow. What an amazing introduction. And you didn't really tell us too much about you in terms of who you are, maybe individually. So you told us a lot about your job. Tell us a little bit about you, maybe where your name comes from, what is your heritage, and where did you grow up?
Sure. No, that's a fair point. That is a fair point. Let's see. So my background, I'm a Persian American. So my family is from Iran, and we're part of the contingent that moved here during and post-revolution in Iran, back in the 80s. And I'm born and raised, actually, you're going to laugh. It makes me feel like such a small town girl, but I was born in Berkeley.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I have not really left Berkeley in the Bay Area. I was born a few blocks away from the campus, and I went there for undergraduate, and I went there for my PhD, and now I teach there. So I sometimes joke that they're going to bury me on campus.
Oh no. Have you, or yes, depending on if you really like that or not. Have you ever been to Iran?
I have not. I've not had the pleasure.
Okay.
I've always wanted to go, and I hope to go. Well, right now it's not during COVID, but hopefully soon. I do have a lot of family there, and I would love to go.
Yeah, cool. And so pick us up a little bit on your day today. I'm kind of curious to hear how somebody that studies neuroscience and neuroplasticity, how you start your day and how you get started.
Sure thing. Okay, well, let's see. Walking through my typical day. I wake up in the morning. I generally do not wake up as early as I think most others do. I try to prioritize sleep, and I am a night owl. So now we can kind of get into fun science facts, but every human has a biological chronotype, and your chronotype is a genetic optimum that dictates the best time for you to go to sleep, but also the best time for you to wake up, but also your energy profile throughout the course of the day. And there are 3 core types. AM shifted, which are kind of like morning birds. There are PM shifted folks like myself who definitely wake up a little bit more groggy. It takes a little bit more, effort and time to ramp up in the mornings, but we get to keep the party going late into the night. So I do my best thinking and my best work after the sunset, or at least late afternoon, which is fun because when you work with other people that are like, I've had a long day and it's 4:00 and they're done. I'm like, just now finally energizing and getting ready to kind of get going. And then you have the vast majority of the human population, and they're biphasic. And those individuals have 2 kind of main peaks and a core trough in the very center in terms of their energy. So mid-morning, they're feeling good. After lunch, they have that, afternoon dip pretty systematically. And then they'll have another bump up sometime in the late afternoon, early evening.
Mm-hmm. And how can you find that out?
You can take a test at mychronotype.com, a digital version. You can also go to a sleep lab, potentially, and get some blood work done. But there's a wide variety of methodologies. I know due to COVID right now, our lab helped get one set up through Berkeley at mychronotype.com with one of the other sleep labs there. And it's a quick and easy few-minute assessment that you can take.
Okay. Super interesting. All right. So you get up in the morning and you do feel a little groggy then, I guess.
I wake up in the morning late. I feel super groggy. I try not to jump into work. I call it, like family time in the morning. I'm super slow. I make breakfast first thing. I'm super hungry when I wake up. So I usually eat the same breakfast every day, 2 eggs, at least. And then I mix it up with the other stuff, but I eat a big breakfast. And I spend quiet time in the morning. That's kind of when my meditative time is. And I give myself, that's my biggest luxury is having a quiet morning. I like to do that. And then I usually go to my whiteboard, when I'm at home, and I figure out what are the big sort of what I call them MITs, most important tasks. But looking at my high level priorities, what are the 3 things if I were to do today would make today a success? What am I going to remember at the end of the day? If I kind of like think forward, working back from the goal, I want to feel really great and accomplished about what I was able to do that day, by the time dinner rolls around. So what is going to help me relax at the end of the night? What's going to help me feel like I did good today and I'm done and I can put my work away? Those are going to be the MITs, the most important tasks. And I prioritize those above all else, which makes me not great at responding to text messages from friends or family. It makes me not that great at responding to emails that come in, but it's my way of not being reactive and making sure I'm proactive on sort of my own priorities.
Okay. And do you then have blocks of time where you dedicate time to those kind of more reactive tasks?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
So it's fun. We're getting into the nitty gritty. I
think it's super interesting.
Yeah. Typical day in the life of a neuroscientist, but or at least for me, not the typical one for a neuroscientist, but because of my chronotype and because I kind of ramp up real slow first thing in the morning, I do identify what the MITs are, but I typically, not all the time, but typically will actually choose to work on lower level tasks first thing in the morning to kind of give myself a little bit of momentum, get some dopamine in the system, and kind of let my energy slowly ramp up. So I'm not at my best self first thing in the morning. So I actually end up doing a lot of the emails and things that might be reactive and lower priority, oddly first thing. I don't recommend it for everyone. If you feel amazing first thing in the morning, yeah, definitely figure out what those, high priority tasks are and schedule that time for that.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that you say that, because I feel like a lot of people actually spend time with the not so important tasks. You have a name for that as well. What do you call them?
They're LITs. Yeah, least important tasks.
Least important tasks.
MITs and LITs. I make a little list on my whiteboard.
Yeah, least important tasks. So I feel like a lot of people actually maybe focus on the least important tasks in the morning, even though they actually have high energy levels and they should be focusing more on the more important tasks.
Absolutely. Definitely. I think just be strategic, right? What about you, Julia? Like, are you a morning person? You think you're biphasic?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if I'm a total morning person or the biphasic one, because I go to bed super early at night, and I love to wake up early, and then I love to work in the morning, and then I usually have a dip after lunch, and then sometimes, sometimes I force, like if I have a lot of things to do, I force myself to continue to work after a break, of course, but it still takes me a little bit of time to kind of get back into work. And then I can sometimes work 2 or 3 more hours, but I usually finish work probably latest at 5, because I also have a puppy and he wants, at latest at 5, he is sitting next to me crying at me that he wants to go outside. So I have this like natural alarm clock in my home that forces me to finish work and go outside, which is really great.
That is so cute.
Yeah.
I love that. You have a non-ignorable alarm clock, as you put it. Stop working, get outside.
Exactly.
You need to have a break.
We need to do something. Yeah, we need to get outside. And it's funny because he just got surgery last week. He got neutered, and he wasn't there all day. And I realized at the end of the day how much I got a lot of work done, but also I didn't take a lot of breaks. And usually when he's home, I always go outside like 2 or 3 times a day, even though it's just for 10 minutes to let him outside. So it's actually a really helpful tool to have a pet at home that you're taking outside on a regular basis, which is kind of
I
funny.
think so too. I think that's awesome. Everyone's going to go, everyone who's listening is going to go.
Exactly. It's going to get a puppy now. Yeah. So, all right. I had one more question actually before we jump into the other question that I already have parked on the top of my mind is, how did you get into neuroscience?
Oh, interesting. Well, I actually started out in philosophy, which is probably not the usual method of getting into neuroscience. But when I was younger, I was really fascinated by the concept of just consciousness and really the study of the mind. So where do our thoughts come from? Where do beliefs come from? What are feelings? Are they even real? Is free will real? All of these very, very old school sort of philosophical questions that really fascinated me. Yeah, and got my juices flowing. And very, very early in my academic career, I was lucky enough to have a faculty member who I worked with actually pull me aside because I was asking a lot of the deep questions. As you might imagine, this is like college. So, everyone always asks those deep questions, like, what is the meaning of it all? And is consciousness even real? And, how much of it can we control, etc. And you pulled me aside and pretty much said, listen, I think you're going to get bored quickly within philosophy. Not that philosophy is boring. It's the love of my life. If I could go back and have the secret career I wanted, it would be as a philosopher. But the questions I was asking and the amount of the answers that were available, the answers that are available to all of us when we do philosophical work is limited if it is a philosophy of mind. When we're talking about consciousness, it is tied in a way that you cannot divorce it from the actual biology and the neuroscience, because we're asking, yes, a philosophical question, but we're asking it about a very physical object. We're asking it of a very tangible biological being, an object. So really the first question becomes, what is the neuroscience of it? What do we know about what's actually going on in the brain? And then we can start to ask some of those philosophical questions. And his recommendation was to actually sort of course correct and change course earlier rather than later to start studying the science of what's going on in order to potentially answer the questions that I was asking philosophically. So I ended up taking cognitive science at Berkeley, and I loved it. I still remember first day of class, I had a chill go down my spine. And it was within the first 2 minutes, I remember, of the lecture, our professor talked about Descartes, famous philosopher of mind, in addition to talking about the basic structure of a neuron. And I was like, okay, I'm in the right place.
Nice. That's so cool. All right. Yeah, I think if I would go back to school, that's what I would study. I feel like when you're 18, 19 years old and you need to make this big life decision of what you're studying, you oftentimes go with business, law, or medicine, right? It's like the 3 big fields. And I went into business, and I don't regret it, right? Like, it's also really interesting and very applicable to your everyday life. But I'm very, very fascinated in neuroscience and also in performance psychology. So if I would go back to school, or if I could do it again, I would definitely do that. I think it's so interesting.
Well, it's never too late.
I know.
I was gonna say,
I know. I've thought about it.
are you one of those people that fantasizes about the second career way later in life? I have that.
I mean,
for
I
sure.
feel like I already have my second career. So from a career perspective, I'm already doing what I love to do. I just love knowledge and I love learning. And I think it would, all of the things that I talk about today are things that I've kind of self-studied and learned myself. But I think it would just be super interesting to go back to school and see and fill the gaps of things that I probably know and don't know,
Absolutely. No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm hoping my second career is going to be in the culinary arts. I have this fantasy of going to cooking school, maybe when I'm like 60 years old, and then having that be my next career.
That's great. I'm going to come and eat.
We can talk about performance psychology while we eat.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. All right. So the cool thing when we met for the first time was that you told me that you are teaching a course at Berkeley that's called Becoming Superhuman, which is already such a buzzword. And the first question that I have for you with regards to this is, what does it mean for you to be superhuman?
Oh, I think for me, what it means to like the foundation of becoming superhuman is really just to be human. It's embracing what makes us human and how special that is, and not fighting it or ignoring it. And we talk about this actually in the class that I teach as well. Day one of class, we talk about what it means to become superhuman, and that it's not adding something to yourself. And I think that is definitely, it is, especially in this new world of sort of biohacks and, what app can I download to help me perform in such and such way? What can I do to kind of up my performance in a meaningful way? I was gonna say, I'm like, you can probably.
I know. I was just looking at it.
Like there's
a lot of stuff going on. That's okay.
But it's really the what's the most meaningful to me, and according to our research, what will make the biggest impact is not, getting the new interesting cool supplement, or downloading this new app or tool that's going to help you be more productive or effective, to get more done. It's actually just to do less or to add less. It's to just figure out how your biology works, what makes you human, and then that helps you become superhuman. It's it's ceasing fighting the biology that helps us do that.
So it's basically to kind of reduce our maybe complex life and focus on the important.
Focus on what's important, exactly.
Focus on what's important. Nice. And so, all right, so you're teaching a class, Becoming Superhuman, and you told me that you are working a lot with corporate people, right? Like managers, CEOs, leaders, and that are coming to this class oftentimes. What do you feel like or see is the biggest challenge for them when they're taking this class? Maybe at the beginning, what kind of shift do you see them make from the start to the end?
Some of the biggest shifts I think I see folks making is actually doing less and focusing on, as you said it beautifully, just focus on what's important. It's the prioritization. And I think that is a surprise, especially to really amazing, effective leaders and executives, effective managers, effective engineers, is that they believe that they might be prioritizing and focusing on the right things. But the process that we go through in the class really allows you to take a full step back and strategize life at a high level. What are you going to remember on your deathbed? What's going to matter 10 years from now? What's going to matter 5 years from now? Let's think that high level. Let's think that long term. And that needs to cascade down to, what do I think about when I wake up this morning? What am I going to think about tomorrow morning? What am I actually doing with my time? One of the biggest mistakes I see executives making and leaders making is they're thinking too short term. They think about the fire that's come down the pipeline. They're thinking about the client that's upset and needs something tomorrow, instead of really thinking what needs to happen, not even by the end of the year, not about an annual goal, but 5 years from now. You know, you said it'd be like the first question you asked me, like, who are you? You know, like, what is it going to matter?
Yeah.
You know, in the grander scheme of things, both professionally and personally. What's going to help you level up in your career? It's usually not going to be answering, you know, email as fast as possible. And I think helping people embrace that, and as painful, it's a painful process always in the beginning. It's like, stop being hyper responsive, take a step back. What's actually important here? What actually needs to get done? What's high value? What's high leverage? And prioritizing that. And the second is most definitely digital hygiene. It is reclaiming a level of headspace, quiet, and control over your own mind and consciousness that has been really stolen from us with the advent of notification technology. It is gaining that space back to hear your own thoughts again, so that you can have those creative insights. You can have that clarity of mind to even know what's important. But in order to get there, you need to be able to create distance between you and your technology. Because if you're constantly connected, then the only thing on your mind is in fact whatever is coming in. You're not the one in the control seat anymore. It's whatever else everyone else is sending you.
What wants from you, yeah. And how do you control that? Like how do you create these spaces in your day?
I generally don't have any notifications on, that's for sure. I try not to check. I don't check the news, or I kind of opt out of social media and things of that sort. I just don't find that it's a meaningful way to engage with my network and people I care about. I mean, I have a LinkedIn and that sort of thing, but I'm not checking it incessantly all hours of the day. I definitely don't have notifications for that. It's unnecessary, I think. So just making sure that my device isn't yelling at me is you know, first base step. The second would be to try to, when I'm trying to be 100% present, for example, with a loved one, or if I'm working on something, if I'm analyzing a piece of data, and I do in fact need to bring 100% of my brain to the task, then I definitely do not have any notifications on. My screen is completely maximized and my phone is out of sight in another room. So I leave it outside. So I can really, it's almost like, it's like simple math. There's your brain, there's you and your brain and the task at hand. Anything else that you have on, if you have your inbox open, then it's not just you and the task anymore. There is actual neurological bandwidth going towards, you know, anything else that might be open. If it's, you know, Slack, Teams, you know, depending wherever, you know, whatever internal messaging
work.
tool.
Yeah.
So I always think of it as, if there's 100%, how much of that 100% would you like? If it's close to 100, then nothing else can really be involved. If you're okay with 50, then fine. Have your inbox open at all times and have, you know, notifications. I'll have an Apple Watch, you know, you're going to be living life at 50%.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting you say that, because one of the reasons why I didn't get the Apple Watch was because of that notification, because I was like, I already have the phone, which my phone is actually always on moon mode. So it doesn't ring, it doesn't vibrate. So I look at my phone whenever I want to, which is why people that know me, I oftentimes miss phone calls because I don't hear my phone ring. And I just have to call back later. But also, when the Apple Watch, I was thinking with the Apple Watch, like it's just another device that is so close to you at all times, that is reminding you of the things that are coming in. And that was a really scary thought for me, actually. So I decided to not go for an Apple Watch. But yeah, side note.
You have good intuition.
You know.
I mean, although I would say I know two people that are close to me that did the Apple Watch, but they make sure that none of the notifications are on. So they're just using it as a reminder to
as a sports watch. Oh
yeah, or the biometrics, right? The sensor data, which is fine, but you can also
that's exactly, yeah, that's really interesting. And I have had that consideration to get it just for that. But anyway, that's really interesting. No, I think that's a really interesting point, notifications and how to kind of remove those things in order to create those spaces. And I loved actually that you said the biggest mistake I see leaders make is prioritization, because I have a podcast that's called The Biggest Mistake I See People Make in Stress Management, which is practicing self-care. So not taking any time for yourself, which is so simple, right? But I'm sure you can relate to this working with all these super successful leaders and people, is that they probably if they are good at managing themselves, they probably are really good about it, or they're really bad about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, sleep is, we have an entire section of the class dedicated to sleep because for some reason, you know, when you asked me before, what does becoming superhuman mean to you? And I said, it's just being human. Sleep is one of those things. And you know this, Julie, it's like self-care, take care of yourself, sleep. If you don't we're not machines. If you don't sleep, if you're not doing all the right things to take care of yourself, you will break down. It may not happen this year, it may not happen next year, but it will happen inevitably.
Yeah.
And, you know, talking about mistakes that people make for sure, you know, giving everybody a wake-up call and actually showing them the data of what happens in the brain when you don't sleep scares people enough into saying, okay, fine, I get it. I'm going to have to try to get, you know, at least 7 hours a night now. And that's always kind of, it's both difficult to see people go through that transition because it doesn't come easy. You know, if you've trained yourself like to believe incorrectly that you can go off of like 5 hours a night, which is not true.
Yeah.
But it's a struggle, but it's a positive change. Yeah. That people can make.
Yeah, for sure. And there is some really cool research on it, and I'm sure you can tell that better than me. So I want you to correct me or tell us. But there's some data that basically says that if you have a certain amount of hours less sleep, it's like you are drunk or something like that.
Yes.
What is that? What is that data specifically?
There was a study done where they were tracking cognitive performance in the lab while keeping people either awake or slowly making them drunker as the hours of the day continued. So you were tracking, I'm imagining, I'm making this up, I'm sure this is not how the study went, but in my mind at the lab, you're just taking shots of tequila and then every like hour or two, you're testing their cognitive performance. And as people were getting drunker, you know, of course, yes, you're going to see performance dip. It's natural. I mean, unless you're in sales. No, I'm kidding. In which case performance
exactly.
just seems to go up. But you see cognitive performance, of course, go down. But what was really frightening about the study is that hours of wakefulness compared to blood alcohol level, the plots looked almost exactly identical. So with 20 hours of wakefulness, you had pretty much a blood alcohol level of 0.06. I mean, it's astonishing, but we trick ourselves into thinking, oh no, I'm fine. I'll just have a little bit more coffee. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. The problem is it's not fine. I mean, we can measure that it's not fine. So you can pretend like, you know, you're just as able to pay attention, that your memory is unperturbed, that you can handle your emotions and regulate your emotions. It's just not true.
And yeah, so people oftentimes even have that effect that they like the almost the drunk effect, right? to feel like they are better and they can perform, and right, people are saying like they can still drive the car, right, that they're totally fine, but then the results and everything else, our experience shows the difference.
Absolutely. And actually this made your comment totally made me remember there's an entirely different set of studies that was able to show that when you are sleep deprived, you're also overconfident in your abilities.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. This is the double-edged sword, is that you, for lack of a better term, you're kind of sucking. You suck, but you also can't tell that you suck. You also are totally under the impression.
But I feel like sometimes there's a delay, don't you? Like I feel like we've all experienced this at some point in our lives, right? But while we were in college or when we started our jobs and we were still partying, and like the first day, or you have like one day, right? Like you go out and like you force yourself to go to work in the morning, and that day you actually feel okay, or maybe like the first couple of hours you still feel great, and then all of a sudden you just kind of plummet. Or the next day you plummet.
Or the next day, exactly. I was going to say all of that is really deeply tied to your levels of glucocorticoids. These are stress hormones in the body. So depending on, usually, I don't know about you, but usually those nights when, if I was pulling an all-nighter, especially for school, it was because there's a deadline or an exam and I feel totally unprepared for it. So you stay up, right? But because of that, you're super anxious as well. And the anxiety will kind of carry you. And then all of a sudden, the moment, you know, the test is over or you've turned in the paper, you just come crashing down.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So another thought that I actually had, and I love that you mentioned it. So you said that the biggest mistake you see people or leaders make is that they are not good at prioritizing. And I actually just recorded a YouTube video yesterday Oh, I was just like, what was the topic? I recorded the topic on how to finish the year strong, and the first tip that I mentioned was to prioritize. But I wonder if people actually really know how to prioritize, and if you actually teach people how to prioritize.
Ooh, well, I alluded to this a little bit before, but my sort of theory on, it's not even a theory really, my approach to prioritization for myself personally, but also one that I have students of mine go through in becoming superhuman. Really, it's taking the whole work back from the goal kind of concept and taking it to a super extreme. I have students and myself do something called the deathbed exercise. And in this particular exercise, you visualize you are, whatever age you're comfortable with. Let's just say 100 for simplicity's sake. You're 100 years old and you're on your deathbed. So it's the end. Let's say, you're surrounded by your loved ones, etc. It's time to go. Looking back on your life, what should have occurred? What experiences should you have had in order to make it so that you feel comfortable and happy to let go and move on? Mm-hmm. What's going to help you leave with a smile on your face? No regrets. Mm-hmm. What's really all that important at that time? And really sitting with that visualization of what's going to help you live the life that you want to live. What's actually important, what accomplishments, what experiences, etc. And once you have your first guess as to what those things are, because this is the other thing I usually recommend my students and myself as well, is that you have to call bullshit on your first answer. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because it's going to be deeply, deeply impacted by your culture, your parents, society, what seems appropriate. What's the right answer? It's like, oh, I want to be like a good father. I want to be a good mother. I want to do this and I want to do that. Are you sure? How important is that really? Do you want to just how about being a good enough mother? Maybe it's not the number one and that's okay. Normalize it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's whatever it is that's actually important. That's the goal, is to try to get to the heart of that. Mm-hmm. So that we can have that trickle down effect after we do this deathbed exercise and we've called bullshit. We really thought about it and we rank, let's say the top 3 things or the top 5 experiences and accomplishments that if you were to have them would make your life complete and good and amazing. And you would leave and move on with a smile on your face. Once we know what those items are, then we need to start planning. We need to start looking at how you're using your time. You need to say, if the top 3 items are to be the best mother I can be, the best mother I can be, to do my job effectively and to level up, let's say, to X position that's maybe 2 above where you are now. Mm-hmm. And here, Julia, you give me a third one. What's the third one? To be healthy, maybe. You were saying.
Yes, I like that. Yes.
Yeah. To be healthy and active, to live a good life for myself physically in terms of mental and physical health. Let's say those are the 3 things. Well, how does that translate? Where does your time go right now? How many hours a day do you actually spend meaningfully with the kids? How many hours a day do you spend at the job? The things that you're doing at work on a daily basis, are they the activities that will help you level up? Because if the thing about your job is to level up, well, let's prioritize whatever's going to help you level up. What are people going to remember at your annual review? Whenever your performance review comes up, what's going to be the thing that's going to help you inch up incrementally into whatever role you'd like to get into next? And what did you do today for your mental and physical health? We end up finding little things like, in my experience at least, you find out people are spending, 90 minutes on Netflix every night. Mm-hmm. That's quality family time. They didn't have enough time to exercise, but they did spend about 40 minutes on social media. Mm-hmm. They end up staying reactive at their jobs instead of being proactive and pushing a little bit harder and saying, I need to prioritize X and Y activities so that I'm not staying online later to finish the work that was actually important. Mm-hmm. So we just rearrange everything. We say, we take a look at the end of life goal. Then we take a hard look at reality. Mm-hmm. Where is your time going now? So I have my students log their time every hour of the day for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Then it's as painful as it is, we take a look at that data. We look at how many hours a night are you sleeping? How many hours a week are you actually spending on yourself, on your mental health, on your physical health? And how many hours are just wasted in between things? Oh my goodness. And then we start cutting. We prune. We say, hey, are you going to be super, super happy that you, spent on average 10 hours a week watching TV? Because if the answer is no, let's reevaluate where that time's going,
Yeah,
So
I
we
love
start,
that. That's
yeah,
amazing.
that's I know. And it's a weird, it's so not, it's like a very
No, it's actually good. I
fluffy,
think it makes sense up until
prioritization method, but
yeah, no, up until the middle point, I was thinking, okay, I'm curious to see how you're trickling it down, because that would have been my second question of, okay, but then you have these leaders and they're like, okay, but work is so important for me, but okay, that is one life goal, right? To make it to a certain position, and then to break that down and be like, okay, how do I get though to these next level ups, right? It's probably not by replying to 100 emails a day or something like that. So no, that totally makes sense. I really love that. And that really explains how to prioritize. I really like that. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing.
of course. Yeah. Yeah. It's likely different and less practical than your method of prioritization?
No. So the thing is that I've never really thought about this deeper question of how do you prioritize, For me, I usually tell people, okay, identify the 2 or 3 things that are the most important for you to do during the week. And then during the day, right, it kind of trickles down. Like I usually have them do the monthly, weekly, daily thing with 2 to 3 of these kind of larger goals, and then trickle it down to make it more effective. So that's a little bit of a different path, but kind of similar, right? To look at the bigger thing and then trickle it down to the day-to-day tasks. But what I really love that you were saying that I do a lot with my clients as well is the awareness piece. And that's where I get most of the feedback as well. Because in the Peak Performance Method program, for example, I have people do a 10-week daily recap, and they have to write down, how were my levels in certain areas like stress, health, physical wellness, etc. They have to write down their prevalent thoughts, what they did for themselves today, and then what they're feeling grateful for. And people always hate it. Like every time they see that they have to do that during the program, they're like, oh, I have to journal first of all, and then I have to take these 5 minutes or 10 minutes per day. But everybody always tells me at the end that it was such an eye-opening exercise to think about these things, because awareness already creates such a shift, I think. And it's the same with time management as well.
I think so. I think that's awesome. And I love that everyone, in the beginning is always shying away from it. Like, I roll, more work for me to do. And it just seems so ineffective, but it turns out to be so effective.
Yeah, I'm sure with the time management, it's the same, because, and I actually have that exercise as well to track I just do it for a day or for a week, depending on how motivated people feel to do like a time management exercise. But even just to track your time for a day is kind of tedious to see where does my 20 minutes go here and my 30 minutes go there. But if you even just do it for a day, so for the listeners, if you're listening right now and your time management is not great, that's a very good exercise to do, at least just for a day, even if you just have a piece of paper next to you and you write down every 15 to 30 minutes where you spend your time. It's super, super eye-opening.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's one of those things. There's a quote that I really love. It's about behavior change, which is something, obviously we're both very passionate about. Mm-hmm. You cannot change what you do not know. Mm-hmm. If you're not aware of where your time is going, you have no place to start with time management. Mm-hmm. There is nothing to change if we're not collecting the data. And there's also really nothing subjective about actual tracking, which I love as well. Mm-hmm. It's like your blood pressure, right? It's like there's no pretending that you didn't just spend 30 minutes in a rabbit hole, like on a Reddit rabbit hole. It is what it is. You don't have to lie to yourself about it. It's right then and there. It's absolutely.
For sure. Cool. It's kind of funny because I can see this book here the whole time, and then I'm going to pull it out here for a second, because it's by one of my favorite neuroscientists, actually, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. Do you know the book?
I am familiar with Joe. I have not read the book, but I'm familiar with his work.
Mm-hmm. So I'm actually curious. So, what I kind of think is interesting about him is that he's kind of combining the neuroscience with spirituality. And he talks a lot about how to manifest your life and how to create the life that you want by rewiring your brain. are people interested in that in your courses as well? Do you talk about this? How do you think about it in terms of breaking your own habits and creating a more abundant life, or more empowered life, or more superhuman life? Like, how do you think about that?
Well, we definitely do not touch on spirituality, I would say, in the class.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, the closest thing we come to creating your ideal life is actually doing that deathbed exercise. It's figuring out, who do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want your life to look like? And then let's actually make that happen. Instead of feeling like you're in the passenger seat in life, which I think is, unfortunately, especially in our country, has a tendency to become the default mode.
Mm-hmm.
It's just accepting the status quo. How are you? How is life? Oh, I'm really busy. It's just been so crazy busy. Why?
Mm-hmm.
What is this busy word that we've all attached ourselves to? It doesn't have to be so busy all of the time. It's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of quote unquote rewiring your brain and living your best life by shifting your brain or shifting your mindset, the parts of that always have really resonated with me is that, going back to sort of that more philosophical side of neuroscience, your experience of yourself and your experience of your life is what is going on in your brain. Mm-hmm. We do not necessarily have we don't have a conscious experience outside of our own minds. This is our entire universe above our shoulders. It's our whole universe. Mm-hmm. So really, your happiness in life is everything going on above your shoulders. So if you can change your mind, you are changing your life. If you change your expectations, all of a sudden the same exact thing can happen, but you're now happy about it as opposed to being disappointed. Mm-hmm. By making these small little adjustments in mindset, in perspective, in reframing. And I think that these are really powerful tools to help us really live the healthiest and best life inside of our own minds, regardless of outside circumstance. One of my favorite books is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And it's just, what a beautiful example of, there is so much of life, and I'm putting air quotes up, is what's going on inside of you. It is almost nothing to do with what's going on the outside and the circumstances. Mm-hmm. So people, unfortunately, I think, make the mistake of saying, oh, if I can only achieve X amount of money, X amount of success, X amount of blah, then the happiness will come. And I don't think that is unfortunately, from a data perspective, has not been the case for human society. You can be blissfully content with very little, and you can be miserable with everything and then some. So I think starting with working on ourselves and what's going on inside of our heads, that is the number one. That's the first step to living your best life, always.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I almost feel like we should leave it right there. That was a really wonderful ending to the podcast. So maybe the only question that I'm going to ask you, because people will probably wonder, is how can people connect with you?
Oh, sure thing. Well, I have a once a month, it's really infrequent newsletter that I send out. It's a quick email and I summarize new research that's come out in neuroscience about performance, but many times, sometimes just about neuroscience, little things like nutrition, et cetera, and sharing research that we're doing out in the world. And if folks want to join that, you can go to becoming superhuman.science. That's the URL. Okay. And you can definitely keep in touch there. Definitely just connect with me on LinkedIn or via email. I'm happy to send you the show note, or it can be in the show notes.
Yeah, it will be all in the show notes. Yeah, I'll put it all in there. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. And if people have more questions for you, I'm more than happy to do another podcast interview with you. So send them my way, either via Instagram or just via email. And we'll have Sahar come back and talk more about becoming superhuman, because it's such a powerful topic, and it's so interesting to have that science background as well. So thank you so much for your time today, and I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Julie. It was such a pleasure, and thank you for sharing some of your tips on prioritization. I'm actually going to take some of those and try it out in the coming days. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, my pleasure.